Hi, hi there, Steve again. Today we got bad news, good news thing going on. We've got to work on the little WR again. I've got a leaking fork seal, and it's leaking so bad I had to bucket underneath it. So bad news, we have a leaking fork seal. They're pretty common. I've already done them a few times. You need to service your forks anyway, so now's a good time to drain them out and flush the old oil out and put new oil in. Good news, it's a pretty simple procedure, and I'll show you how to do it. Bad news, it takes a couple of special tools, but you can pick them up lots of places. Most motorcycle shops, Rocky Mountain, Cycle Gear, will have the tools you'll need. And I'll show you each of those as we get to what we're doing here. So first thing we had to do is pull the front wheel off, and then we'll start loosening up some bolts here. And I'll go through it as I'm doing it to show you how. All right, now the front wheel's off, and we can start loosening up the triple clamps. And we need to pull the cap off later, but it's easiest to loosen it while it's still on the bike. But these top clamps are squeezing it, which makes it darn near impossible to loosen that. So we'll leave the bottom ones tight and loosen these top two, and then we can crack this loose, this top cap. We're not going to take it off, we're just going to loosen it. We can take it off later once the fork is off the bike. These are just 10mm bolts, and we just have to loosen them up, and then we can loosen this top cap. You can say all I really got to do is break it loose, because we can unscrew it once the whole thing's off the bike. So then we'll loosen the bottom triple clamp bolts and pull that fork out. Sometimes these are tight. You can spread these out just a little bit. I guess that one doesn't matter. We'll just take a screwdriver in here, pry that open, and it falls right out. Okay, now we've got the fork off the bike. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, and I'm going to pull this guard off. It's just got some little 8mm bolts, and pull those off. Pull this guard off and clean this up a little bit before we move on. All right, now I've got it cleaned up, got all the gunk clean off of it, and now I'm going to drain it, which is messy. I always make a mess when I do this. And that's basically just pull the cap off and pour it in a bucket. like I say, once it's loose off the bike, you can just do this by hand. It's not hard. There is a spring in here. You can't see that down there. And it's sealed with an O-ring. That's why it doesn't have to be that tight. There we go. And now you can see it's attached to the spring. Okay, now this hard part is you need to hold the spring down so you can get a wrench on that nut. And the bottom side here is a 17 millimeter. And then we loosen the top. And then once you get it broken loose, you can just pull this off. And there's your cap. You don't want to lose your spacer. And then your spring can come out. Then we dump it. Oh, well, let me show you this. Down inside the tube, there's a little bar, and that is the adjustment. Is that compression on top? The compression adjustment. And when you turn this upside down, it'll fall out. So don't lose that little piece of round bar in there. There's that bar. And I usually like to leave it upside down, drain it in a bucket for a little while. Let as much oil come out of it as possible. And then we'll separate the two pieces and put in a new seal. Alright, now taking the seal apart, there's a dust cap on here. You just get a screwdriver carefully and pry it up, and that comes off. And then down inside there's a little retainer ring or clip. Looks like that. It's split. You just gotta pop it out. That's what's holding the seal in there. And then we just bang it apart. And to get it apart, you just pop it a couple times, and it should. Once the retainer clip is off, it'll pop the old seal right up. Just like that. Okay, now it's apart. We just gotta pull this stuff off. There's a bushing here, and you'll see it's split. There's a little split in it, so you get even just your fingernail will work. Get your fingernail in there, separate it a little bit to get it opened up, to get it off. I suppose two hands would be easier. There's that bushing, and then there's this bushing, and then there's a washer, And then this is the oil seal right here. That's what's leaking. So I'll clean this up. Pull off my clip. Pull off the dust seal. So now I've got a bare inner tube here. Got my nice Yamaha OEM fork seal kit. We just reassemble. So first is the dust seal. Get some fork oil to lube it up before I put it together. Well, also, hold on, let me get the first special tool we need for this. Okay, special tools. The first one is a bullet. It's just a plastic cap that'll go on your fork to keep things from catching on these ridges when you're putting them on. Wrong one. This one. I've got a couple different sizes for different kind of bikes. So this slides on here, and it goes over that lip, so your seals don't catch on it as you're putting them on. And then the other specialty tool we're going to need in a minute is a seal driver. But I think that's about it for special tools. The bullet and the seal driver. You can also do this with like electrical tape or something if you don't have one of these, but they're cheap. They're only $1 or $2. Well, more than $1 or $2, but they're not expensive. My dust seal, put a little oil on it because it goes on first. Don't forget to put it on upside down. And then the little retainer clip, and then my oil seal. Which is right here. And I'm also going to put a little fork oil on this. To help it slide on there and get seated. And it just slides on over that. And then the aluminum washer goes on. And then the two bushings. But now I'm done with the bullet, so that can come off. Really. It's got oil on it. Now I'm done with the bullet. Pull that off. And the little bushing is going to go down in the other one. The other two. So that goes there, and then the larger bushing I'm just putting a little fork oil on it. And it's got a split on it so it can open up. And it seats down right inside that groove right there. So now I've got 2 brand new bushings, brand new oil seal, brand new dust cap, and then everything just goes back together. Make sure my fork tube is all cleaned out. Okay, so this goes down inside, and then that small bushing seats in there. If I can get it to go. Get my bushing down in there first. There we go. It's down in there. And then the fork seal itself. Fork seal driver. Give her a couple of taps. And you can hear that when it's solid. That means it's seated. And then we put our spring clip back down in here. Where's the screwdriver? Just to make sure it's seated. And then finally the dust cap. And really that's it. We'll fill it back up with oil. And on this bike, yeah, that's it. Got our tube, we'll put our spring back down in there. On the WR250R, stock specs are you fill it with oil until there's 4 1/8, with it fully collapsed like this. No spring, fully collapsed. 4 1/8 inches air gap to the top of the oil. So I'll fill it up and then I'll measure it. And I'll run my rod up and down a few times until we get it to about 4 1/8 inches. Oh, and just so you know, stock, this takes 5 weight fork oil. And I'll run this up and down a few times to get the oil in all the passages. And I'll check my levels. And then we'll put the cap back on, put it back on the bike. Where are we at? Okay, so then once you get your oil level set, we can go ahead and put the adjustment rod back in here. Alrighty, and when we're dropping the spring on, pick that up. And we don't want this to fall. Let me see if I can tilt you up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Because now we have to get our little spacer goes on here, our washer goes on here, and then we have to get it started on the cap. You have to hold this down while you start your cap. Get my wrench on there. Get my wrench up here. Screw it all back together. Make sure there's no crud in here. And that's it. Let me just put it back on the bike and we're ready to go. Alright, now the same thing applies here when we took it apart. If it doesn't want to go in, we're just going to use a screwdriver to separate it a little bit. And then it will slide right up in there. There we go. I'm going to tighten these up just a little bit, and then I can, because that'll hold it. Then I can tighten the top cap, 10 millimeter. And then I'm going to line everything back. I'm going to loosen this back up, straighten that out a little bit. There we go. Okay, I'm going to use a torque wrench. This one's in inch pounds. The bottom ones are 14 foot-pounds or 170 inch-pounds. And the uppers are 17 foot-pounds or like 205 inch-pounds. So I'll set this at 170 and do the bottoms. And I'll set it 205 and do the top one. All right, different camera. Pro tip on putting on an axle. You want to tighten this first to keep everything from binding up. But it was spinning, So I'm just going to tighten this side just temporarily to keep my axle from spinning. And then I'm going to get my wrench on here and make sure this side's good and tight. And then I go back, and you'll see, I've seen these even on brand new bikes where everything is bound up and your suspension will not work properly if everything is all bound up. You want this. You want everything free and moving. See how that can move on there? You want that to center itself so nothing is bound up. And once this is tight, the axle's all the way in and everything's good where it needs to be, then you finish tightening up these axle pinch bolts, and that'll help your suspension work a whole lot better. So anyway, that's it for me, because these are the last two bolts over here. Switch hands, and we are 100% back together, ready to go ride, not leaking. Got fresh oil in there. That's it. I'm done. Ready to go. Fork's no longer leaking. And I'm ready to go. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, drop me a comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Anyway, thanks for watching.